think the first word that comes to mind would be balanced. And I mean balanced in the sense that Episcopal is a really good school. It's academically rigorous. Students coming to us have to be good students and serious students that want to work hard and want to grow and want to really take ownership in their own education. But at the same time, Episcopal is not the type of rigorous school where it's all work and no fun. We do balance the academic rigor of the school with students having plenty of time to engage in their extracurricular passions, whether it's sports or arts or maybe robotics or science experiments, things like that. Students have time to do that here and still be a teenager, still have fun, still go on fun trips on the weekend or hang out in their friend's dorm room and maybe, watch a movie or watch a TV show. So our students, I think, because of the balance that we offer, they're really happy students here and they like being at Episcopal. It's not always perfectly balanced, though. Of course, there's some weeks where a student might have more exams or a paper due or something, so they might have to shift their balance a little bit more towards the academics. But then there'll be other weeks where maybe they don't have any major assessments or projects due, and they can shift a little bit more towards extracurriculars or the fun side. Balance, I think, is absolutely key. As I think about Episcopal students, and certainly the students are the lifeblood of the school, and so I think if I can describe the students, I'm also describing the school. I would say engaged. And again, our students are engaged in so many different ways. Certainly they're engaged with their academics, and they are learning in small classes, discussion-based classrooms, hands-on experiments in the science building. But they're also engaged in the process of learning in community as well. And so they're not just, studying in their room by themselves. They're studying with their friends. They're not just struggling through a difficult math concept by themselves. They're working very, very closely with their teacher or with another math teacher or another science teacher that they have a close relationship with. And so they're engaged in the process of understanding and learning and applying that learning to the real world in a community, which I think is really special. Our students are also very engaged in their extracurriculars. Again, whether it's sports, whether it's fine arts, performing arts, whether it's robotics or yearbook, our students are engaged in making this community that much better than it was before. And we love assembling a student body that is ambitious and excited and driven to make an impact. And we really benefit as a school community when they're impacting us as much as possible. And then our students are also engaged with the world around them. Again, being so close to Washington, D.C. and kind of an important city that you see on the news a lot, our students are really engaged with the whole world and the global community as well. They tend to be, the type of students that really know what's going on, in different places, certainly in the U.S. and throughout the U.S., but it's also, it's an international school, and Washington, D.C. is an international city. And so we really pay attention to what's happening globally and how our actions impact the rest of the world and how the rest of the world also impacts things that happen here in the U.S., in Washington, D.C., and even on our campus. My last word to describe Episcopal would be character, because at the end of the day, it's the character of the students that matters the most. And not only does that play a role in what we do in the admissions office and seeking out students of good character, it's also the fundamental part of our mission is to develop a student's character and we can educate their minds and we can make them very, very advanced intellectually. But if we don't also educate their hearts and continue to have them be good people that are growing and developing and applying that goodness of character in all areas of their life, if we don't do that, we think here at Episcopal that we're failing our students a little bit. And so it's something that we do. And to the point where, of course, goes into the lessons that we're teaching in our classrooms. We bring in the character values that matter most to Episcopal into the classroom, but we also bring it onto the playing field, and we bring it onto the stage and into the orchestra room. We bring it to every interaction that we have with our local neighbors when our students are going out into the community to have a field trip or to maybe just go to a restaurant. We're teaching our students how to behave and how to act honorably and with great integrity. To summarize, it's balance, it is engagement, and it is character in lots of different ways. At Episcopal, all of our signature programs are overseen by the McCain-Ravenel Center. The McCain-Ravenel Center is named after Senator John McCain, one of our most famous alumni. And when we were talking with Senator McCain and having this idea of naming this center after him to oversee all of our signature programming, he initially said no because he's a very humble person, or was a very humble person, and didn't want himself and his experience to be the focus. But after some thinking, the idea came out that we could name it after him, but then also after his favorite teacher and mentor at the school, William Ravenel. And so it also highlights the close connections that students and teachers have here. But the McCain-Ravenel Center oversees 5 main areas. The first and maybe most important and most famous are our experiences that students take into Washington, D.C. We call these experiences flex blocks. And the way that our schedule works is that every single class period over a 2-week rotation has the opportunity to take 2.5 hours to take the class from campus into Washington, D.C. and back in time for the student's next class or next obligation. And so these flex blocks are baked into our schedule, and it's not a normal field trip. A normal field trip is a little bit more, we're going to go to this museum, we're going to walk around and we're going to see some things, but it might not exactly apply to everything you're learning throughout your academic day. In this case, with the flex blocks, teachers designed the field trip and the flex block experience to directly touch on and enhance what the students have been learning in the classroom or in the laboratory. An example might be in a biology class, if the students are studying genetics, that they study the theory at the front of the classroom on the whiteboard, and then they go back into the laboratory and they have some hands-on experience with genetics and DNA. But then the teacher might say, okay, everybody, on Thursday, we're not coming to the classroom, meet at the minibuses, and we're going to go to Georgetown University and meet with a researcher that's using gene therapy to fight cancer or Alzheimer's or COVID or something like that. And just having that experience to meet with someone that's using what they're learning in class in the real world to have an impact on society, and to be able to ask thoughtful questions and understand, what the person's saying back to them. It's this amazing experience. We've taken students to embassies for different countries. We've taken students to galas and important events. We have constitutional law class, camps out at the Supreme Court every year to be one of the first people to get in to watch lawyers present their case in front of the Supreme Court. So we're able to do really, really interesting things because we're so close to Washington, D.C. We can get in and out of the city, still have really neat experiences, and not have it impact the rest of the academic day, which is amazing. Also under the McCain-Ravenel umbrella is our externship program, and students engage with externships in one of 2 ways. First of all, juniors and seniors in the afternoons during our afternoon option time can choose maybe not to do a sport or not to take part in a fine arts opportunity, but go and do an externship in an area that they're really interested in. Those externships can sometimes be in person and can sometimes be more virtual options, but there are lots of ways for students to really engage in areas that they're deeply passionate about. Taking that externship idea a step further, all of our seniors, 100%, for the month of May, they stop going to classes and start going to work at externships. And again, these externships are in areas that they're interested in. And so if a senior is thinking about maybe being a lawyer, they could go work at a courthouse, or they could go have an externship at a law firm. If a student is really interested in finance and investing, they can go work with a company that's doing research and selling that research to investment banks. If they're interested in tech and entrepreneurship, they could go work with one of the many startups that exist in Washington. And also sometimes, like, our students don't necessarily know what they want to do, and they just think of experiences that could be fun. And I had an advisee 3 years ago, and she and a friend decided that their externship was going to be exploring the farm to table restaurant experience. And so they came up with this idea where they would visit all of these restaurants. They visited a lot of farms where the food was actually coming from. And they did this like really deep dive into kind of that farm to table idea within the restaurant industry. Are they going to go off and start a farm to table restaurant? Probably not. But it was this really neat experience that they had. They were like very adult in how they would set up appointments and meetings and interviews with restaurant owners and chefs and farmers and just like have all of these really important experiences. And so it doesn't have to always be very high-minded, and you don't have to be, doing architectural drawings every single day during your externship. They can be fun too. It just depends on what you want your experience to be. And faculty help the students through that process too.